Greetings and salutations. This is Abdelhadi with the Bitter Truth, where we may not have all the answers, but we've got an awful lot of questions. You can also become a bitter pill on patreon.com/the bitter truth, where you can get some fabulous swag to make your life better. Today, I have the freshly minted nominee of the Libertarian Party for the 17th District of Texas. And this is interesting because the other two big parties, who we don't need to name them, are in a runoff right now, maybe because nobody can tell the difference between Twinkies and Ho-Hos. So there's that. Ted Brown, how are you, man?
Oh, hey, thanks for having me.
Hey, thanks for your patience. You are a mensch. That's a nice old Yiddish word. It means you're a good sport. You're a good guy.
I know. Thanks.
So let's jump in really quick. So you got the nomination. That's all squared away. Even though the convention is in May, you guys are all squared away on your congressional and Senate races, right?
Right. We do local nominations for the congressional and state offices. And so I was nominated in March by fellow libertarians for the congressional seat. The only thing in May, if we still do it, and which I don't think we will because of the virus pandemic, is having our national convention to nominate a presidential candidate. And as you know, Congressman Justin Amash just announced his candidacy
for
the Libertarian nomination. But now there's talk about postponing our convention so we can actually meet. And it's because now there's all the limitations because of the virus.
How do you feel about Justin Amash?
Oh, I like him. He has his record in Congress for the last 9 years has been probably one of the most libertarian, in fact, the most libertarian probably, with only Thomas Massie coming a little bit close as representing that point of view. And that means he votes by himself a lot of the time, or within 410 to 3, 410 to 2, those kind of votes in Congress. And it seems like I'll probably be in that category as well if elected, because like Justin Amash and Thomas Massie, I will follow the Constitution. And so much of the legislation they're proposing in Congress is unconstitutional, just not what they're supposed to be doing there.
Well, and then and this is the thing too, is getting in there. How do you? Because, I mean, as far back as 1900, 1905, I mean, even Teddy Roosevelt was complaining about a bot Congress. How do you get in and make these changes, short of doing what Ron Paul used to do, or not, I can't even think of anyone else who had that kind of balls, but just to, to go corral a camera and get on CNN and get on Fox News and go, this is wrong, this is what we got to do to put these people's feet to the fire, because it seems like they're just beholden to their donors, all of them, even the so-called progressive, Ro Khanna, AOC, the fraud squad, they're just dialed in and purchased. I mean, it's funny, now people are noticing AOC and her capitulation. Within 3 months, I was like, dude, this chick's a sellout. My friend's like, oh, no, she's awesome. I'm like, aside from that echo stunt that she pulled in Nancy Pelosi's office, she hasn't done jack. It's like the mafia took her in the back room and got her mind right with some rubber hoses. And within a couple of months of being in office, she's on the cover of Rolling Stone with Nancy Pelosi calling her Mama Bear. It's
amazing. But see, that's the thing. It's tough to be like one of 435 congressmen, and that's what Amash and Massie have seen. But I would certainly do what Ron Paul did, and what they do is try to get as much attention for my views as possible. And as you know, C-SPAN has those 1-minute speeches every day where the congressman can go up to a practically empty floor, and it's being shown nationwide, and they give a 1-minute speech about what's going on in the country. And that's what Ron Paul used to do also. And he would, in fact, they've shown some of those clips from the 80s, the 90s, the 00s.
Yeah.
Ron Paul giving speeches predicting what's going to happen if the government does X, and almost everything he's predicted came true. If they do this, the economy is going to do this. If they do this in foreign policy, there's going to be blowback, and we're not going to succeed in these crazy foreign adventures. Just you got to listen to some people like Ron Paul and like Justin Amash and like Thomas Massie, and I'll certainly be in that category. Though I want to work with as many people as I can across the aisle if they will have me. And I'm very easy to get along with. I'd be glad to work with Democrats on civil liberties issues, Republicans on economic issues, if they're willing to do so. But you're right. They love those campaign contributions. And in fact, they should even be wearing those jackets like the NASCAR drivers that say who their corporate sponsors are, because that's what it really seems like.
Well, Silicon, it's stickers like Google and Facebook and everybody else, because it's exactly what they're doing, because they go against even the TARP bailouts in 2008. It got voted down the first time. And then
Right.
they had to go to a second vote because the people were so overwhelmingly calling into the Congress
Exactly.
and saying, "Hey, don't you vote for this, or we're going to vote you out," that kind of thing. And
Exactly.
and then they just ramrodded it through and did it anyway. And here's the thing: on the concept, I don't have a problem with bailing out small business or bailing out the worker, like with this pandemic we're in the middle of. Right? You're telling people to stay home. Some people can't afford to stay home. Okay, well then,
right.
we have them. I did the math on this a couple of weeks back when all this was going down. If we paid every American $1,500, every American over 18 now, not the kids, but every American over 18, which is 157 million Americans, if we gave them $1,500 a month, that's 1.3 trillion in 10 months. That's one day of bank bailouts to banks that may or may not loan the money to small business who needs to stay afloat.
Right. These stimulus, these quote unquote stimulus packages is ridiculous. They were jumping, the Congress was jumping all over themselves to give money to these big corporate bailouts. And frankly, these corporations, they theoretically could go bankrupt and restructure themselves if they don't have enough revenue or enough business.
Right.
But individuals can't really do that. These small businesses are going under, and individuals are going under who work for all kinds of businesses. And, my view is obviously we need to be worried about this virus, but there's going to be a lot more damage from the shutdown of the economy in the long run because of so many people being unemployed and starvation and unemployment, starvation, years and years of it because of the government. I mean, the entire response initially was incompetent, and some of the governors and mayors and various officials just went full tyrant instead of just recommending that people stay home, instead of recommending that businesses or the people stay apart from each other, recommending that they use better hygiene. They just went full government tyranny by saying, no, you're shutting down. Your business is non-essential. Well, it's not up to government officials to say what business is essential and what business is non-essential. That's up to the free market. Plenty of people would have closed their businesses voluntarily, A, either because they were afraid of the virus, or B, because their customers were afraid of the virus and wouldn't have come in there. But to make it force of law, people want to take the chance, should be able to take the chance. So that's what's happening now, where people are realizing that we just can't go on any longer. We've got to open up our restaurant, we've got to open up our hair salon, we've got to open up our furniture store, whatever the case may be, and people are rebelling all over the country because of that.
Well, see, and this is my point, though, is like instead of giving, between these 5 packages, I think the total is close to $7 trillion to the top 43,000 millionaires in this country, right? Which is,
I'm not surprised. Yeah,
it's a staggering amount of money. And so instead of doing that, why not disperse it to the people who need it during this epidemic? And then, or pandemic, what do you want to call it? And then guess what? They got to make a deposit. Guess where it's going to go? It's going to go in your bank anyway. They got to buy things because they got to keep rent going, keep mortgages going. You get that money, as opposed to this fracas of it's not even a bailout. It's just a big gimme to their buddies that donate to them. And when you see a bipartisan, there is no liberal and there is no conservative anymore. A Republican is not a conservative, and a liberal is not a Democrat. These people are just one big money party. I mean, I had Howie Hawkins on a couple of weeks back, and then I talked to guys like you. That's what it used to be. It's not that way anymore. I mean, and we always err on the side of tyranny, don't you notice? Like we never say, okay, like you said, stay home, and wash your hands. This because we know this isn't the flu. Right. We know the contagion is different than the flu. We know that you can have it and not be sick for 6-8 weeks before you finally get sick. And in the meantime, you gave it to everybody else. These are my brother's an MD. He's worked on 1,000 COVID cases in the last 5 years. And he'll tell you that this is not those COVID cases. Completely different. So all of that to say, how is it that constitutionally, and maybe it's been sooner, maybe it's been earlier than what I'm going to say. But it just seems like since the Korean War, we have just been in opposition of the Constitution for the last 70 years. And it just has been a slow march to just amending like the Patriot Acts and the NDAA and these latest rounds of bailouts the last 20 years. Am I mistaken, or have we been subverting the Constitution since probably earlier than 1950?
Oh, probably starting like in the turn of the last century, like in the early 1900s is when all that started, especially during what's called the progressive era, like
Yeah.
starting around like 1910 on, because there were a lot of people then that said, well, we got to use the government to do all these nifty things that we want to do, and we can't have the Constitution stand in our way. This is what the people need. They started going.
But then the people didn't get any of that. Woodrow Wilson did the Espionage Act. I mean, Woodrow Wilson was a fascist.
Well, he was. I can think he's the worst president we've had, really. Trump's pretty bad, but Wilson, in the long run, did so many bad things regarding the economy and about pretty much we shouldn't have been in World War I
at all.
Because if we hadn't been, that probably would have led to there not being communism, not World War II, and even some of the problems with the Middle East now because of the way they redrew the map after
the Sykes-Picot Agreement. Yeah, the Sykes-Picot Agreement was and the Balfour Declaration was just. Yeah,
exactly. But it started back then about that. But since World War II is what the national security state is what really has damaged our liberties. They instead of having like the constitutional republic, they've really made it a national security state where the president can do whatever he wants on foreign policy, send troops wherever he wants. And Congress says, oh, yes, please, we don't want to have any kind of responsibility anymore. We don't want to declare war like we did in World War II. Mr. President, just do whatever the heck you want in foreign policy, and they're afraid. They're afraid to challenge the president on that when they should, and hence we have disasters like the Vietnam War and everything that's been happening in the Middle East since like the late '80s. There.
Well, let me get to that really quick because as a congressman, if you get elected, you're responsible. I mean, people always talk about the Senate as the top 100 most powerful people on earth.
Yeah,
the Congress is the other 435 most powerful people on earth for at least a couple of years.
Well, the problem is though most House members don't get to do much in Congress. The legislative leaders, like the Speaker of the House, the Minority Leader, they get together with the President and also with the Senate Majority Leaders and the Senate leaders. Like 5 or 6 of them just meet and decide what all the legislation is going to be. They don't allow all the congressmen to have input. The proper legislative process is to have hearings. The House has hearings, the Senate has hearings. They craft legislation. They hear testimony. It's all public, and they put together a bill, and then it can be amended. Like members can amend the bill. They haven't done that for the last 20 years. It's been this cabal that goes into the back room and writes the legislation, and then speakers like Nancy Pelosi say, oh, but we'll know what's in that legislation after we pass it. Well, you're supposed to know what's in it before you pass it, and I will never vote for a bill like that. There should be smaller bills, 1 page saying we're going to do this, another one saying we're going to do that, instead of 800 pages, 1,200 pages. And then they throw it on the congressman's desk like 3 hours before they're supposed to vote and say, this is a must-pass legislation. Well, if I hear it's must-pass, that means must vote no. Because that means, like you mentioned about George Carlin saying there's a particularly great deception going on if it's bipartisan support.
Right. And he was less eloquent about it. He just basically said, get ready to get fucked. When they both agree, you're gonna get fucked. And so so let's talk about some of the big boondoggles because like the last Democratic debates, nobody talked about defense. Nobody talked about the adventures. We're in about 9 wars right now, if I'm not mistaken. In the last 20 years, and the deficits, the national debt is $21 trillion. However, the defense lost $21 trillion and failed an audit to account for $21 trillion over the last 20 years. So it's
and Congress keeps throwing more money at the military, at the Pentagon, than they even ask for, and here they're wasting all that money. What we need is what's called, Jimmy Carter actually was in favor of this, amazingly enough. It's called zero-based budgeting, meaning that agencies do not get the amount of money they had the previous year plus an inflation boost. They need to justify all their programs from scratch every year before they get an appropriation. And I think that would change a lot because now all these government agencies, including the Pentagon and every other agency, if they haven't spent all their money, they just start wasting it the last month to make sure they get their appropriation. They buy furniture they don't need. They buy cars they don't need, whatever the case may be. And that has to stop. I mean, just the taxpayers are being screwed all the way down the line.
Well, see, and that's the thing is like it's not these people's kids that are dying in these wars either. And you're dying for Raytheon, you're dying for Boeing. You're not fighting for my rights. My rights are not. Go ahead.
Yeah, nobody's attacking the U.S. I mean, obviously, there are a bunch of criminals in 9/11 that did that, but in general, these countries that we're attacking, they have no They have not done anything to the U.S. I mean, Afghans have not attacked the U.S. I mean, the government of Afghanistan, the government of Iraq has attacked the U.S.
That's right.
The government of Yemen, the government of Syria, none of
Libya.
them. They're just, Libya. I mean, it's ridiculous. We are really, the U.S. has been the aggressor in these wars because these countries have not threatened us in any way.
Well, we're blankets with smallpox, man. That's just what we are. We are not a force for good in this world.
It doesn't seem that way, and we should be. We used to be like the beacon of freedom and liberty that everyone wanted to aspire to, up until 100 years ago or so.
Yeah, well, what happened? Yeah. This is my little theory. Around the 1890s, when Grover Cleveland was president, we got to the edge of the country. We had colonized ourselves. We had nowhere else to go, so we had to go to Japan and the Philippines and Singapore and Cuba. And you can't justify that because we just got out of the Civil War 30 years before. And, people remember 30 years ago. So they're going, oh, we don't want another war. So you got to justify it. So you make up the Maine. The Maine was a lie, and you make that up. And this isn't the Abe Gazette. The Department of the Navy put out a report in 1976 that said that the Maine was an electrical fire.
Yeah.
But we said it was torpedoed by the Cubans, and that justified the entire Spanish-American War, all of 4 months. But guess what? We got Cuba, we got Japan, we got the Philippines, we got Singapore, we got Hawaii, we got everything. And so this is the thing with our defense budget, what drives me crazy. The Russians just upped their spend to $80 billion a year. Number 2 nuclear power in the world. They just upped their spend to $80 billion. The Chinese about a year and a half ago went from $150 billion, where it hung out for about 10 years. They just went up to $225 billion. And you're going, how do you do that? And then you look at what the Chinese do. The Chinese have 2 bases just outside of China.
Right.
Russia has 7, a few of them in Syria. It's like they don't spend all this crazy money, and miraculously enough, they got healthcare and they got free college, which was free when I went. And now you're going to tell me that I can go blow up brown people and take their shit for free, but you can't, help out a single mom with milk and eggs for her kids. I mean, we've just sort of lost a humanity with all this craziness, and the people in power just don't seem to even give a shit about us.
No, and Russia and China, I think they probably get more bang for the buck for their defense spending also. For example, in China, if they found that somebody was stealing money or couldn't account for billions of dollars of their military budget, that guy would be executed probably. I'm not suggesting we do that to our people. But they need to go to jail. They need to go to jail if they're stealing money from the American people.
Well, you know what they do in Vietnam? Well, in Vietnam, when the 2008 crash happened, that was pure mitigated speculation and bad actors. That wasn't an accident. That wasn't, we misjudged the stock market or we misjudged the housing market. In Vietnam, about a year and a half ago, they hung 6 guys that were busted for the exact same thing that we bailed them out for and let them pay their executive bonuses.
Yeah.
Maybe that's too much. Maybe we shouldn't hang Jamie Dimon, but he should go to jail. Right?
Even Iceland, which is one of the calmest, friendliest countries in the world, put their bankers in jail.
They put 30 of them in jail, and one of the maximum sentences I saw was 20. One guy got 25 years.
I'm kind of surprised because probably nobody does anything in Iceland that requires 25 years.
How much did you steal that you got 25 years in Iceland? I mean, Lloyd Blankfein did 400 times worse than Steve Mnuchin, One West Bank in California. You're from California. You remember that debacle?
Mnuchin's terrible.
He's horrible. He didn't even get indicted because he was paying for Kamala Harris's attorney general campaigns.
Oh, I didn't even know that one.
Both of them. Both of them, I shouldn't say he did, Goldman Sachs did, but because One West Bank was a Goldman Sachs subsidiary, she left him alone, despite the fact that her investigators brought 1,000 cases of mortgage foreclosure fraud. And they said they had 1,000 more, and Kamala Harris said, we're not investigating these. And not only did she not investigate him, there was no indictment, nothing. He just skated. And then you come to find out that Goldman Sachs paid for her 2 top cop campaigns and paid for her Senate race.
No, I'm not surprised. And meanwhile, she was putting innocent black guys in jail.
Who get to fight fires? Who get to fight fires for $1 an hour? Because 40% of California state firefighters are nonviolent offenders.
Right, and then they can't get a job as a firefighter after they're out of jail because of their conviction.
Because they got a felony. Isn't that nice? And then we wonder why we have an 80% recidivism rate in the richest country on earth. We occupy 25% of the prison population of the earth, and we're not even 5% of the population.
Exactly.
It's like
Exactly.
as a congressman, how could you rectify some of the defense spending? Like what kind of thing? I mean, obviously, you said in kind of a general way that you would find like-minded people to write legislation with, but except for Massey and Amash, and I can't name. By the way, I can't name a single Democrat that would talk to you.
On some of the military, you might get a few.
Right.
You might get a few that would vote against the military spending. And especially if you pointed out about really played up with them about the poor minority children that are being blown up or something. I think they might respond to that, unlike the Republicans.
Right.
But still, no, it's a very limited number because the military, the Pentagon, has pretty much arranged for there to be military spending in every congressional district in the country. So to spread it out so that there's no congressman that I can say, oh, there's no military spending in my district, so I don't really care about that spending. They made it such that they have constituents in each district that are dependent on military spending. I mean, some states and some districts more than others, but it's everywhere. And that's the problem.
Wow. So, and that's the thing that drives me crazy is that when you just said there'd be a few Democrats, I mean, I don't know who they are because I mean, I like I'm in Austin, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm supposed to be in Blue Austin. And I meet people all the time that defend their party. And when you talk about Barack Obama and the wars, they just it's like the adult children of alcoholics.
That's exactly right.
They'll defend him and go, well, no, because explain Libya to me.
Yeah.
Explain that to me. Explain Syria to me. And don't give me this he's a bad guy bullshit because we support 73% of the world's dictators until we don't.
Exactly. I think it was Hillary Clinton's really the one to blame for Libya, I think.
She is.
I think Joe Biden legitimately actually opposed that behind closed doors.
Yeah.
And Obama wasn't anywhere to be found, apparently. That's what he was accused of. They were trying to reach him. He was out playing golf, but Hillary was the one that took full responsibility for destroying that entire country. I mean, it's...
Well, she elbowed her way past Robert Gates. It's not even her gig. She's Secretary of State. That's a defense call. Yeah. But she elbowed her way past Gates. If she wanted to look tough and being presidential.
Yeah.
And then I think Sarkozy. I think it's this spring. It's supposed to be last year, but they postponed it. But he was on trial. He got busted for taking $50 million of Gaddafi money in 2004 when he ran for office. And then all of a sudden, a few years later, 2007 when he ran for office, and then all of a sudden a few years later, he's saying we got to go into Libya because at first it was a NATO-led deal, and then the discussion was, does the United States Air Force support the NATO-led bombing? And Hillary charged in there, yes, we do, and we go in there. And based on what? And now they have slavery, by the way.
Yeah. Oh, Libya's a hellhole.
Good times.
Of course, it just joins dozens of other countries that are hellholes all around the world because of the way their governments act.
And that's the thing, to your point on that, it's like one of the things that frustrates me is I remember reading right when the thing went down, I think it was Rolling Stone, because they're actually – I don't know how they get away with their mainstream press, but I think it's because Jan Wenner doesn't care. He's his own guy, and he lets Matt Taibbi do what he wants. But there was a report on Libya in Rolling Stone where for about a year or two, Gaddafi had a feeling. He kind of knew what was going on. He saw the writing on the wall. He wasn't stupid. And he flat out told the Italians, he told the French, told the Germans, listen, what y'all are doing in Yemen right now, we got refugees up the ass. And guess what I'm doing? I'm giving them jobs. I'm putting them through school. I'm feeding them. Take me out at your peril because you're going to get refugees from Syria and Yemen up your ass within a year.
Yeah.
And what happened? Goes to Christmas Future. He was gone, and by 2012-13, Europe is just run amok with these refugees. We don't know where they came from. Yeah. Well, maybe Yemen and Syria and everybody else we fucked up, including Libya, right? I don't know, man. It's just I'm just really dismayed. I mean, I think, and not to doubt you. I mean, I believe you. You seem sincere, and you're libertarian. You can be nothing but sincere because it's not like people are throwing a ton of money at you guys.
Not at all, no.
But it's like how do you get in there and not get co-opted like Ro Khanna or Newt Gingrich? That guy was totally bought and sold. I mean, AOC, the Fraud Squad, Pelosi is like the godfather too. I mean, you don't become $100 millionaire, in the House making $200,000 a year.
Oh no, not at all. Harry Truman said if you make money in politics, you have to be a crook.
Yeah.
And that's about right, because he was like impoverished when he left office. He barely had enough for his rent.
Well, he's the one he's why they started the library system, by the way.
Right, and pensions also. I think.
Yeah, because he barely got the pension part, but then Eisenhower was the first guy to get a library, and the reason was because they didn't want to have an ex-president running around, having to work at Best Buy part-time because he doesn't have any money.
Exactly.
So
greeter at Walmart.
Yeah, hey, how you doing? I used to be president. Now, hey, welcome to Walmart. So they came up with a library system, which in addition to the pension is like an income generator, because they that's a private enterprise that goes directly to the ex-president or the estate, right? So, but no, it's like I did the math about 2 or 3 weeks ago. I won't belabor this too much, but I got friends that make six figures, quite a few actually, and some for quite a long time, and none of them are worth $100 million.
No.
And so I did the math. I got a friend of mine that makes about $500,000 a year the last 20 years, and he's got a nice house. He might have about $5 or $6 million socked away after 20 years of $500,000 a pop. And I did the math. I'm going, okay, so how is it that someone making half that money for the same amount of time is worth $80 million, like Mitch McConnell or Nancy Pelosi?
Yeah, there are thousands of Americans that probably have assets in the few million,
right?
Just because of real estate and their businesses that might be sole proprietorships or something, whatever the case may be. Yeah, these massive amounts have to come from like insider deals about knowing when to buy stock and just getting tip-offs. Like right when the virus was coming out, how that one senator whose husband is Senator Loeffler, whose husband is head of the American Stock Exchange. I guess she's a trophy wife or something that lives in Georgia.
Yeah,
I mean she's like selling all their stocks.
Yeah,
he allegedly knows nothing about
Feinstein, who said, "Oh, my broker did it," and then that other Republican cat. It was like 9 or 10 of them. And meanwhile, they're doing this during the impeachment hearings when we kind of knew when the virus was happening. We had like 10 years to do a run up on the virus, and we didn't do it. So and we got some time left. So like getting into the kinds of things that you'd want to do as a congressman. What do you want to get accomplished in the short time that you would have? Let's just say you don't get reelected. What could you bring to the fore that you would get? I hate to use the word bipartisan, but you would get enough support to start putting people's feet to the fire.
Well, I think I really would have trouble as a freshman congressman who was a libertarian getting much legislation passed. Some people go, even the Democrats and Republicans go there for 10 years and never get anything passed.
Right.
It's just a matter of making the public aware of what's going on, and it's kind of a bully pulpit. I mean, I would have more chance of being interviewed by the media by virtue of being a congressman than like just sitting in my living room in Texas making statements like this, or us just talking on the radio like this.
Mm-hmm.
But if I am a congressman, like I said, I'm making those speeches on C-SPAN every day. And if I'm elected, probably some other libertarians would be elected also. The few of us could really, and what would really be great is, okay, say if Congress was almost tied and there's like 3 or 4 of us that make up the balance of power, that would be the time when we would be able to have some influence.
Yeah.
Because they'd say we decide who the speaker was pretty much, and that would also help.
Sure.
but the odds of that happening are pretty slim. So it's really just a matter of getting publicity, making points, calling out hypocrisy and on both sides of the aisle, because that's what we have to do. Just try to chip away at that two-party, one-party system, pretty much, where they just keep doing what they're doing year after year after year.
Well, let me ask you something. So, like, what are the chances of us moving to, say, a parliamentary system like Britain or Israel or someplace? Like because I think it seems to me they're a lot more volatile. Mm-hmm. Like Britain will call for emergency elections. The French call for emergency elections, and the prime minister ain't working out. Like, fuck you, and they call for emergency elections. They get a majority, and all of a sudden they're running some new dude for prime minister, and we had like 3 prime ministers in the last 4 or 5 years step down. In Britain, and here you would never see an American president step down, like ever.
Well, no,
right?
That's like the most powerful position in the world. Why would they want to give that up?
Right.
But if we had a parliamentary system, I mean, Nancy Pelosi would be the prime minister probably as leader of parliament.
She my face.
Yeah. That's the thing, because you don't want the executive and the legislative to be the same people, and that's what you have in like Britain. There might be the Queen, but she's just a ceremonial head of state. Otherwise, the prime minister is both a legislator and an administrator. So there you have, they can more quickly violate people's rights in England than they can in this country.
But they don't really have they don't really have those protections in their constitution, do they?
Well, they say there's the British Constitution, but it's not written. It's like the traditions of English common law over there. So no, they violate people's rights right and left.
Okay.
Like with privacy laws, and they have those cameras all over the place.
Well, we do too. I mean, 70% of our surveillance is outsourced, and that goes to Booz Allen and Hamilton and Amazon.
And it does seem like most anything that happens, there's some film of it.
Yeah, I mean, anywhere. I mean, it's like the joke I make all the time. I was dating somebody till a little bit ago, and she would say things like, "Oh my God, what if they're watching us?" I'm like, "Well, then give them a show because they've been watching us for a while." Because if you go on a business trip, and to be transparent, like we'd send each other pictures where she's like, "Oh my God, what if this falls into the wrong hands?" Well, it's not military secrets. And if they're going to use it to blackmail me, then screw it. I'll openly talk about it on my show. All of the few hundred people I have to listen to this on a regular basis.
Exactly.
Like
they do say don't take a picture of anything you wouldn't want to send over to your grandmother. But that's another question.
See, but my grandmothers are dead. That's where my grandmothers are dead. See, and my mother, my mother still has a flip phone from 2003. She's not even on a smartphone, so there's no way she'll see it unless one of my brothers show it to her. So I'm fine. But
okay.
But seriously though, like if we were to just get into defense, how much of the rest of the country could be adequately funded? And I mean, and not these bullshit bailouts that don't go to anybody, don't go to small business, don't go to human beings. Because China just upped their spend to $225 billion after years and years at 150, and the Russians just went up to $80 billion. And one thing I'd like to make a point of is Trump's first year in office, when he got his first defense budget, they gave him $80 billion more than what he asked for.
Oh, exactly. And there was this crazy thing. I might have mentioned it the last time I was on the show. This Congressman Thornberry from North Texas, who's like head Republican on the Armed Services Committee, he went ballistic when there was someone moved to like make the military budget like I think $733 billion instead of $750 billion, saying, "Oh, without spending that $17 billion, we're doomed. It's over.
Wow.
We're going to be under. We're going to be invaded, killed. Our children are going to be sold off into slavery, whatever it is." He just thought that loss of $17 billion out of that massive military budget was going to kill off the country. And that kind of attitude is what we've got to get away from. We got to point out, well, not only does $17 billion have to be cut out of that budget, $300 or $400 billion have to be cut out of that budget the first year, and they need somebody to point. Nobody points that out. I don't even think Amash and Massey point that out. But there needs to be some people pointing that out, saying, nope, this is unnecessary. We spend more than the next 10 countries combined on the military, and none of them are really a threat to us. Well, maybe. Unless they wanted to nuke us, that's the only time they're really a military threat to us. Otherwise, no.
But this is, I'll take a little sidestep here because we got a couple minutes here. I want to wrap up with one last question with you. But this is where it's like wrestling, because the UN Security Council, the 5 permanent members are China, Russia, Britain, France, and the UK. Mm-hmm. So all this WWE shit we do in the South China Sea, trying to saber rattle China in their own territory or whatever. It's like more sanctions on Russia, and it kind of gets to my last question here. It's like, how do you think we can overcome the disease of American exceptionalism? And I say that because everything you're saying makes sense, but flies in the face of people who are baked in to what the media tells them, and the media tells them this shit based on the fact that they think John Wayne was real, and that Red Dawn was a documentary. Okay. Yeah. So like when you hear about World War II, you never hear about how the Russians actually helped us in World War II.
Oh yeah, we're coming up on VE Day, and it was Russia that invaded Berlin and pretty much took out the end of the German army there. We were in
the south of Germany, man. We did D-Day and moved south, and Russia was in. That's how the Eastern Bloc and the Warsaw Pact became, because it was either World War III with Russia to chase them out, or divvy up the spoils. All Russia did was ensure that the spoils are going to be divvied, as discussed between the big 3 guys. It was Churchill, Roosevelt, and Stalin. Right. And so that's what we had to do. But you see these movies, and they'll talk about the Battle of Midway up and down, but they never talk about how the fact that after Germany was vanquished, Russia then moved east and went through China and went into the north of Japan and helped us in Japan to finish off the Japanese, even though they were finished for a while. I mean, we never. It's always as baked in. We're John Wayne, and so a lot of our mindset, a lot of our shit, like we hear Joe Biden say, we got to get a return to normal. I'm sorry, which normal? The normal where we invaded 7 different countries in the last 20 years and bombed the shit out of them and took the stuff for free? That normal? Because I don't want that normal.
I'd rather have Warren G. Harding's return to normalcy about what it was like before the First World War. We'd be better off with that.
And he pardoned Eugene Debs as a screw you to Woodrow Wilson, because Debs went to jail for the crime of running for president. By the way, you know that, right?
Well, it was also for, it's just saying one little thing against the war. I mean, that's the thing. Anybody that said anything against World War I was off to the pokey there.
Off to the pokey. And I think Wilson jailed like 9 or 10 guys, and he had pardoned them all before he left the office, but he left Debs in jail.
Yeah.
And then Debs ran again in 20 from prison and got 1 million votes. And then Harding came in all of 9 months because he died of a heart attack. But then he came in and he pardoned Eugene Debs.
He did. And Debs even went by the White House on his way back from prison and met with Harding. It was pretty nice. I mean, Harding was a nice guy, actually.
Yeah, he was.
One of the nicest guys to be president, probably.
Well, you know, he liked whiskey. He liked the ladies. The rumor here, and I'd like to believe this. I don't know if it's true or not, but apparently he was with one of his floozies in the Lincoln bedroom, and he had a heart attack in flagrante. And
he was actually like on a speaking tour of like the West.
Okay,
when that happened. Yeah.
All right. Well, I would like to believe the other thing, but I'll believe you. You're smarter than I am, so I'll let that lie. Well, hey, listen, man. Let me let you do your thing. I appreciate the time so far, and you know, we're kind of cutting it. I'm working on a new format to try to do 30 minutes, but
okay.
Let's do this. As you guys approach the convention, if you want to come back on again and talk about some of the things that you're observing, let's say, for example, with the presidential nomination, because I know, Lincoln Chafee dropped out.
Right.
So what's up with you guys in that? I mean, is it like Adam Kokesh, Chafee is out, Vermin Supreme is still on, right?
Well, Chafee's out. Jacob Hornberger was a leading candidate. He's one of our great scholars and writers. Kokesh is a good candidate. Former Judge Jim Gray from California, who was our vice presidential candidate in 2012, has announced. But Congressman Justin Amash coming in as the big kahuna in the race. I think he's going to be the nominee and be one of our top candidates ever. And
you're cool. And in wrapping up, you're cool with this, right? A lot of these libs and greens get really pissy when ex-big party people come into their party. You're good with this,
right? Because it wasn't like Amash already quit the Republican Party like last year and became an independent.
Right.
And the writing was on the wall for a long time because he's had a libertarian voting record for years. So I don't blame him at all. I mean, he just couldn't have been elected as a libertarian, and so he was running as a Republican. Massey's practically the same way. Mm-hmm. He's pretty libertarian, but not quite as much as Amash.
Right.
So these guys are they're practical. Same with Ron Paul running as a Republican.
Right.
The Republican Party doesn't like these guys, and they're going to learn that they aren't going to have much power or influence in the Republican Party. So hopefully, we're going to get more of these guys.
But there just seems to be this mindset with you guys and the Greens that it's like a carpetbagger attitude. Like, you know, how dare they come in here? I remember Bill Weld took a lot of shit last time because he was running, and he was
True.
You know what I mean? It just seems like that. It just seems to be the vibe, you know.
It is, because we've had some of these guys who are not really that libertarian. That's the thing. Amash has proven himself by his voting record, the same as Ron Paul did. That he really has a libertarian voting record.
Right.
Now, Gary Johnson as governor had a great record, but Bill Weld did not. And so he was trying to make up for bad positions all the way along the line. And we had a former Congressman, Bob Barr, was our candidate in 2008. He was more of a conservative than a libertarian, though still pretty good on a lot of things. But he was the one that really upset people. And then Weld. I don't think Gary Johnson upset very many people. Everybody likes him.
Yeah, I never had a problem with Johnson, and Weld just, he just seemed to be like kind of whatever. But then I guess Jesse Ventura is trying to jump into the Greens, and I
don't even think he's a Green. So
he was an independent. He was an independent for years, but he's actually been rumbling, and he's trying to run as a Green now, and the Greens seem to be excited about that. Because he's name recognition.
Yeah, he does. Well, does he really? That's the thing. That's
the thing.
The question. Yeah.
I don't know.
Just we think that when we're in politics, people in politics think that different people might have name recognition, or the voters know more than they actually do, unfortunately. So
right.
Yeah.
Well, hey, listen, man, let's wrap this up, and then for sure, man, I'd love to have you come back on the next handful of weeks here, and
Oh, I'd love to.
I'm probably going to start increasing, like, more than just once a week, and probably get to a couple of times a week if I'm going to half an hour or so. But genuinely appreciate your time, man. And folks, my guest has been the
Thanks so much.
newly. Oh, good.
Thanks so much.
Oh, you're welcome, man. And folks, my guest has been the newly minted congressional nominee for the 17th district in Texas, Ted Brown. If you like what you heard, feel free to jump on patreon.com/the bitter truth. I also write articles for the texasfreepress.com, which is largely a libertarian site, but they let me get away with it. So for how much longer, I don't know. So if you want to keep reading, that you'll find me on that and patreon.com as well, with those articles that come out every Tuesday. And if this stuff makes you uncomfortable, guys, it's supposed to. Sleep tight.